Tables of Knowledge Part 2. Let's go. Again, have a go and fill them in first, but I'm just going to zip through and fill it in, and you can check it against it. So yeah, first one is transport tissues. I've got xylem, phloem, artery and vein. So transport sugary sap from mature leaves. Well, that's the job of the phloem. Contains valves. Well, veins contain valves. Has a thick layer of muscle in its wall allowing vasoconstriction. That's an artery. Has perforated end walls. That's our phloem. Transports blood towards the heart. It's arteries away from the heart, so that's a vein. Has lignin in its wall, that's xylem, to strengthen its wall. Transports magnesium ions from root to leaves, well, that's dissolved in the water that's transported in the xylem. Carries blood at low pressure, that's always a vein. It has a thin wall, and it's been through an organ and coming back to the heart, so its pressure's been lost. And directly involved in translocation, that's the xylem. No, it's not, so that's transpiration. Oh, it's phloem. Did that on purpose. Yeah, transpiration for xylem. Phloem is translocation. Super. Good. Drugs next. Name a drug. Yeah, control of heart rate. Well, this is digitalis. Digitalis. Where do we get it from? It's the foxglove. This is just learning for like facts for facts' sake, I think, really. It's not the most interesting bit of biology. Aspirin comes from willow, and that's a painkiller. Also used for other things, but in an exam, call it a painkiller. Penicillin, this comes from a mold. It's a fungus, so mold stroke fungus. And its use is an antibiotic. Be careful with antibiotic, antigen, antibody. Next, nervous system. Let's change colour. Yeah, so the part of the nervous system that detects stimuli. These are receptors. A neuron found entirely within the spinal cord. See how the cord hasn't got a H in it. This is our relay neuron. An effector that secretes chemicals when stimulated. Well, effectors can be muscles or glands, so a gland would secrete things. The gap between neurons is a synapse. Technically a synaptic cleft, but synapse is fine at GCSE. A neuron that carries nerve impulses towards the coordinator is a sensory neuron. Along with the spinal cord, this forms a CNS, that's the brain. And a neuron that stimulates an effector is the motor neuron. Next one to accommodation. What's that about? Oh yeah, it's the eye, isn't it? So yeah, accommodation, this is focusing, in other words. This is focusing. So I'm going to focus on a near object. Well, when I focus on a near object for a long time, my eye gets tired. So and you get tired where muscles are contracted. So ciliary muscle is contracted. I'm going to put yes here. When I look into the distance, it's going to be the opposite. So that helps me get into the question, I always think. And if I'm focused on something near, I need a really round lens to bend the light, to refract the light. So lens needs to be thick and round, it's yes. No, it will be flat. For distant, and then suspensory ligaments are tight. Well, the lens wants to be thick and round. It has to be pulled flat. So there's going to be no tension on my ligaments, and this is when there is tension on the ligaments. So that's why it's a bit confusing, because these are the opposite way around. Yeah, when the muscle contracts, the diameter of the muscle gets less as a circle, and therefore the ligaments are tension's taken off the ligaments. So yeah, if you learn one, the opposite. Yeah, halve your revision and learn focusing on a near object, and just know that it's the opposite. Let's do plant hormones. We'll change to green for this because it's plants. So it's shoot and roots. Again, you can learn one of these and know it's the opposite, really. So due to gravity, auxin gathers on the lower surface. Yes, that's true. So that's going to be the root. Yeah. Auxin stimulates elongation and growth of cells. So yeah, that's only in the shoot. It's the opposite in the root. So auxin slows elongation. That is the one thing to remember. If you remember that auxin causes elongation or growth of cells in the shoot, you can work everything out. Undergoes positive phototropism. Yeah, well, the shoot does that. Undergoes negative gravitropism. Well, negative is away from gravity, so that's the shoot. The root would do positive gravitropism. Undergoes positive hydrotropism, that's the root. So it's a bit tricky. And just to show you quickly that if this is there's a shoot coming out of the ground. I've got a light shining from this side, so there's the light. I know it's going to bend towards the light because it needs to do photosynthesis and get light. Therefore, if that's the case, then auxin made by the tip is going to accumulate on the shady side and it's going to cause those cells to grow faster. Therefore, it will bend, well, it will grow round towards the light. Yeah, and therefore get more light for photosynthesis because the cells on the shady side are going to elongate faster. Next is reproduction. I've chopped off the heading, sorry, but never mind. So let's go back to red. So involves fusion of gametes. Yes, sexual does. Asexual, you only need one parent. Faster has no need for courting and mating. Yeah, asexual is far faster. Takes place when conditions are favourable, when organisms can do both. Yeah, so we're assuming an organism has got a choice of sexual and asexual. But when conditions are favourable, it may as well do asexual because it's faster and you know that your offspring are going to be the same as you. Clones are produced. So if you're well adapted to the environment, then so are your offspring. So yeah, sexual. The only good thing about sexual is that it gets variation into the offspring and therefore you're more likely to survive in a changing environment, again, like due to like natural selection. DNA next, the number of strands of DNA in a chromosome. There are 2, it's a double helix. The number of different bases in DNA, well, there are 4. There's A, T, G, and C. The number of bases that code for one amino acid, it's 3. The name of the DNA monomer. So this is a nucleotide. You need to know the parts of a nucleotide. Sugar phosphate base. A always binds with T. G always binds with C. And the section of DNA, part of a chromosome that codes for a protein, is called a gene. Sampling next. So yeah, there's 2 techniques you have to know. Random sampling and transects. Quadrat needed. Yes and yes. It's just how I use them. Used to measure distribution. Yeah, that's a transect. I lay my quadrats out every predetermined distance. So every 5 meters, I'm going to place a quadrat as I move away from the stream into the middle of the field. A question like that was on your mock, I think. Used to measure how much in an area. Yeah, that's random sampling. I scatter them all over the place in a random way and work out the mean number per quadrat. Placement of quadrat is random rather than regular intervals. Yeah, that's random sampling. So yeah, both of them need a quadrat. It's how you use the quadrat. Genetic techniques next. So yeah, name a technique. Genes from one species are placed into another, e.g. to make plants resist a strong weed killer. So this is genetic engineering. Next, the nucleus from a skin cell is placed in a denucleated egg cell. The resulting cell is given electric shock, you get an embryo, and it goes into a surrogate. This is adult cell cloning. So yeah, I'm gonna clone you by taking one of your cells. After IVF, the embryo is split, and smaller embryos are placed in the uterus of surrogates. Again, I get more desirable offsprings. This is embryo transplants. And a few cells are taken, normally from the meristem, so it's a plant, and reproducing sterile conditions. Hormones are given to the plants to make roots and leaves. This is tissue culture. There we go, genetic techniques. And that's the carbon cycle. Plants and algae absorb this gas for use in photosynthesis. Well, that's carbon dioxide. Animals gain this from plants, but find it very difficult to digest as it forms tough cell walls of plants and algae. Well, that's cellulose. Carnivores gain lots of this as they eat meat. That's protein. Get a carbon-containing molecule. Some decomposers release this global warming gas in anaerobic conditions. This is methane. Methane, if you're American. And all living things release this gas when respiring aerobically. We started with CO2, finishing with CO2. Super. So again, we've done lots there. Again, hopefully spotted something that might work. Again, the accommodation thing where you can halve your revision is really, really useful, I think. Okay, take care.